Welcome to Women Don't Do That, where we empower you with inspiration, knowledge, and skills to redefine your boundaries and unleash your potential. I'm Stephanie Minton, founder and CEO of Beacon North Strategies and your guide. Small town girl turned CEO while navigating career, motherhood, ADHD, and chronic migraines. Our conversations range from interviews with visionary women to solo episodes filled with actionable insights. We are your hub for turning what ifs into let's go. Are you ready to redefine your possible? Let's get started. Today I'm joined by Rachel Mielke, founder and CEO of Hillberg Berk, one of Canada's most celebrated jewelry brands. In this conversation, she talks about her bold vision for her company, what's happened in the past, how she got to where she is today, how she's building a values-driven company, started from home, scaled nationally, and navigated challenges along the way, including cancer. We'll talk about motherhood, inspiring you to think bigger, lead with purpose, and apply all of these practical lessons to your career and your life. I can't wait for you to dive into this episode. Welcome, Rachel.
Glad to be here.
Can you start off by telling us what does life look like for you right now?
I run Hillberg Berk out of an office space in Victoria. My team is across the country, so I do spend quite a bit of time on the road traveling. I have 3 children. I'm married to my best friend. So right now, I would say it's pretty full, but also full of so many amazing blessings.
I love that. How old are your kids?
There's a pretty big spread, so from 9 to 26,
Okay, so you've got all kinds of different stages going on.
all of the stages.
Mine are 12 and 14.
Okay, so those teen years.
Teen girls.
Oh, wow, that's exciting.
Yes, yes. So we're in the middle of all the things.
Yeah, I bet.
What motivates you to live your best life?
Well, I think a big part of having kids is it really changes your outlook on your life in many amazing ways. So I think part of what motivates me to live my life in a certain way is my upbringing, the
Mm,
values that I felt like my parents instilled in me. Specifically, my mom was a huge influence in my life, and I think, is the reason I am the person today.
mm.
And then, as you grow and mature and if you have children, to me, I want the world to be a bit better, a bit easier for my kids to navigate. And so, a big part of it is coming home to them every day and just, continuing to show up and do work that I believe is going to hopefully leave the world a little bit of a better place for them.
I love that. It's definitely something that I aspire to as well. And we're going to talk about more about how you integrate some of those things into your business, which I think is so important. When we talk about Hillberg and Berk, you started it at your home and you grew it into a nationally recognized jewelry brand. What inspired you to start the company to begin with?
So I think, when I was young, I was definitely interested in creating things and in
Mm,
creativity, and that consumed my spare time. And as I grew up, I had this sort of like feeling that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I think it's because I came from an entrepreneurial family. Both sets of grandparents were entrepreneurs. I think it was a little bit just like in the blood. And
mm,
so I knew I wanted to start a company. And, growing up in Saskatchewan, thinking about starting a fashion-based business was not something I thought was like a feasible, like realistic career option.
right.
So I went to business school and then got a job. But during that time, I started making jewelry and I started to teach myself the art behind jewelry making. And then organically, I just got asked to make pieces for people. And that led to doing some shows, which led to me realizing that there was an opportunity, some green space in the market, and I could combine my passion with entrepreneurship and something that I absolutely loved and actually, bring about a business that makes a difference in the world as well.
I love hearing you talk about that because I have a daughter who doesn't necessarily fit the perfect mold of like, you're going to university and you're going to do these things, but she's so creative and she's taking a break right now but when she was in about 8 years old, she was taking advanced sewing classes and the things that she would make and like you'll find her somewhere with scissors and all kinds of things. And if she needs like an eyedropper for a project, like she'll just go make one from scratch. And I love about what you shared because sometimes I think for those of us who went to university and had, fairly straight paths in their careers, we don't know how to harness or encourage or support those kinds of skill sets. And so it's really interesting to hear about your journey about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, and I would say for your daughter, just like lean in and encourage that. I think the world for our kids is going to be so different than the
Mm,
world we grew up in. And I think entrepreneurship is an incredibly important part of the success of our economy as a nation in the next decade. So, we need entrepreneurs, we need innovation, and we need risk takers. So I would absolutely encourage that.
that's really exciting to hear. Can you talk about the growth of your business from when you started? What are some of the milestones that take you to where you are today?
Yeah, so, launching Hillberg Berk in 2007 was, it was scary because I launched it from my kitchen table and with no funding. I was doing it on credit cards and not quite knowing how to grow the business. But there was these different, like I would say, moments that really provided a platform for a jumping off place for Hillberg Berk to get our brand known and really launch as a business. One of them was going on Dragon's Den and getting an investment through Dragon's Den, and the reach and the love of that show is so
Mm,
widespread across Canada
mhm,
that it really gave us a tremendous sort of platform to build our business from. Also, the venture capital investment at the starting point of H&B was a big piece for us to begin scaling up. But it actually led to, I would say, one of um, the biggest failures that was like a turning point in the business. So after Dragon's Den, if you had a brand in Canada in 2007 and 2008, you probably weren't opening stores because there
mm,
was still too much of a distance between like direct to consumer and launching a brand. So you were growing your business most likely via wholesale partnerships. So after Dragon's Den, that was the route that I wanted to take, take the money, find wholesale relationships across North America. And I went and I set up at a big trade show in New York. And the trade show was January of 2009, which ended up being, unfortunately, one of the worst like Christmases retailers had had in over a decade. And so that show was not very well attended and really led to, us coming away from it with no new business and a
mm,
huge chunk of the venture capital spent and a real like reflection of like, okay, this isn't the route. So it's either I'm either going to give up and kind of walk away, or I have to rethink what's working. And it's taught me that time and time again, coming back to what's working and really asking yourself, well, why am I doing this in the first place? Gives you
mm,
that grounding to do what you need to do and probably what you should be doing in the first place.
mhm,
So that, that moment of failure was really an opportunity to steer the business in a different direction. And when I asked myself what was working, what I realized was we really had an amazing support community where Hillberg Berk started in the prairies. And those
mm,
people were coming and knocking on our doors every day to shop with us. So we thought, well, why don't we open a small store right here in Regina, which is what we did. And that was the turning point for the company because that little store and 400 square feet and the little 100-year-old character house in Regina tripled our business, as a
mm,
company in the first year. And then it funded our second store, which funded our third store and led us to where we are today,
mhm.
17 years later with stores across the country and a really exciting, growth ramp ahead of us.
That's really exciting. When you did you ever imagine at the start, were you just like, I want to start this company, we'll see where things go? Or did you have a hope or a vision for it to be as big as it is already?
I think when you're an entrepreneur starting a business, you have to have this combination of a big vision, which at the time almost seems unreasonable or
Hmm.
a little bit delusional. But if you're not setting your vision like almost at an unreasonable level, the
Hmm.
path to get there, it kind of just keeps taking like challenging turns. So in on one hand, I think there was the seed of belief that I could grow a global brand from this this idea of creating accessible, beautiful, high quality jewelry that also gave back to causes that support women.
Mm,
And the path to doing that from Regina, Saskatchewan seemed like an impossibility. So I think the whole journey of entrepreneurship has been this sort of like calibration between reality and the fact that it seems impossible to do this, or seemed impossible,
right,
with my belief that I could do it. And
right.
just kind of like going back and forth, between the challenges and the hardships, but coming back to believing in yourself.
Hmm. That's amazing. When you look at the scaling story, were there certain decisions or certain things you did? Like you mentioned Dragon's Den being a big one, but what are some of the things that helped make that jump along the way?
I think for sure the first big one was realizing we wanted to own our relationship with our customers, and we
Mm,
wanted to go directly to consumers, building out a website back when e-commerce was really not a thing, opening our first store, again, when brands weren't really doing that. That was a full turning point, and it made us realize that we have something special in the DNA of our brand that customers
mm,
really are attracted to. We make them feel a certain way when they come into our store. And
mm.
that is something that's rare. And so the more we doubled down on that, the more we fueled our own growth and our own success. And throughout the journey, I think we've had these amazing partnerships and opportunities, both with Olympic athletes and with the Canadian Olympic Committee and team, the opportunity to create and design two pieces of jewelry for Queen Elizabeth.
Mhm.
And, they were kind of all moments that built off of each other, that helped spread our message and get our brand out, and really kind of led to where we are today.
I heard you speak a lot about the culture that you had and how it was different and how people really supported that. How do you maintain that as you grow?
So having not really worked in another organization other than the brand that I've built, I think in many ways I was able to dream up a
Mm,
cultural, or like an organization and a culture that I wanted to live and work in, and I wanted other
mm,
people to work in. And so I think that we have a culture that's quite different
mm,
than most places. And as you grow and scale and your business, spreads across provinces and across the country, you have to be so intentional in how
mm,
you find the right people that are going to support and maintain that culture. And, ultimately you have to stay rooted in the truth of why you exist.
mhm,
For us, the intentionality around creating brand values that we guide our entire, employee experience through, from recruiting to onboarding to training and performance management, everything is rooted back in the values of our business. And so it's really easy to see if someone is going to be a good fit and be passionate about the values that we support as a company or not. And, it's really easy to then kind of find the right people who will continue to build the culture, even as the company grows across the country.
right. That's fascinating to think about. And so when you talk about you feeling like your culture was different and unique, can you talk about like how would you describe your culture?
I think that the things that make us special and make us different are maybe the softness that our culture has, and the inclusivity, the amazing collaboration. We're constantly checking in with all the people across our business, and surveying them and asking
Mm,
how they're enjoying their experience. And consistently, the question around what do you enjoy most about being at Hillberg and Berk, it's like the community of the
mm,
team gets along so well, and is such a one of our values is one team. We work together, we win together, we lose together, but at the end of the day, we are all in this and doing this together. And so I think that, again, I haven't ever worked in a different organization, but we have incredible retention across Hillberg and Berk. I had, I think, 14 employees that just celebrated 10 years in the company. And the reason that I think that we have that is because people enjoy their experience working for us and really love being a part of the brand.
I think there's also probably something special and important maybe about the fact that you did grow your own brand and didn't have that experience working for other people because it doesn't put you in a box. You get to create your box about what that looks like. And it sounds like you've created something very special. When we grow businesses, there are many times there's firsts, right? And there's many times, and I say this as a business owner myself, where you grow and then there's lots of new things and you're not really sure how to handle them. And then you grow. How did you navigate those moments where you didn't quite know what you were doing, but you had to figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, you can't grow a business without going through those moments.
Hmm.
And, if I was to know back then what I know now, you know, you have to navigate a lot. And I think the reason why I was able to go through some of the challenges that I did and keep going was, I think, a confidence that I had that I believe was instilled from my mom.
Hmm.
Like she always made me believe that I could figure anything out, even if maybe it seemed like I didn't have the skills or didn't have the experience. And so then I believed that. I always believed that I could. But also a critical thing is you have to be surrounded by people that can be a voice of reason, give you good advice, and also help you to check in on yourself.
Yes.
You need challengers in your court. You have to have
Hmm.
people in your business who are willing to tell you the truth,
Yes.
which sometimes, it's challenging to actually do that
Hmm.
with the people that work for you. So, I think the initial confidence, which was challenged very early on, as I started to navigate challenging things in the business. But sort of like going back to that, just feeling of belief in myself because I had someone else who believed in me like unconditionally. That really was a big part of it for me.
Wow, that's a good lesson for us, especially as mothers, to keep in mind. And mine was
Yeah.
similar, so I can see how that can make such a big difference. Um, and I loved what you shared about creating that environment for your team to push back or ask questions. And I often say to my team, like, I'm not the smartest person in this room. Like, we need the best ideas, and my idea or may not be the smartest or the most efficient. And constantly reminding them, like, you're allowed to tell me no, because I'm an ideas person. I actually need someone sometimes just be like, no, we're not starting anything new. I'm like, this is permission to give it back.
Totally. Yeah. You have to build that culture. Otherwise you like grow an echo chamber
Mhm.
and it's hard to sustain for the long run if you live in an echo chamber.
Yes. One thing I think that's interesting to think about as you grow companies is that you'll often hear this advice about how, whether it's financially or experience wise, that you should be with other people, or at least sometimes spend times with other people that are at the same level or above you in terms of where they're at with their businesses. So you create, relationships in terms of getting advice, people to talk to, peers, people to kind of walk through that experience with. Um, and that can be really challenging, right? Because if you're coming up from, like you said, building something in your house, and now you're running this global brand, you don't necessarily have those networks. So what advice would you give to people listening who are kind of been given that advice and are trying to build some of those networks to step up?
I think like without a doubt, the people that I had in my life who could give me guidance, advice was unquestionably a huge part of the success that I've
Mm,
had. There's so much you have to learn and the speed at which you have to learn it, which it's like
mhm,
faster now than it's ever been and as slow as it's ever going to be. You need like good advice, you need expertise, you need people you can rely on and learn from. So, when I was getting started, it really was challenging to navigate as to sort of figure out who should you talk to and,
mm,
who had the right skills. And over time, I just learned you need this whole like almost repertoire of people in your life that
mhm.
they have different skill sets, different expertises, different viewpoints, and then you kind of know who you can talk to. I also joined an organization that has been, for me, it's been transformational, called YPO, which is like a
Mm,
global network of business owners and professional managers. And in that network, we are in small cohorts. So I'm in a cohort of 8 other people. And we meet 6, 7 times a year and share everything,
mm,
business, personal, and that has been transformational in terms of not only business learnings, but life learnings, and
mm-hmm.
just committing kind of along with that group to living a certain way and showing up as a partner and as a boss and a parent with a kind of like shared set of values that I feel like I have with that group. But those people, having those other 7 people that I know I can pick up the phone at any point and call them and ask them for their advice or support for something that I might be navigating is pretty invaluable. So I think you have to be relentless in your pursuit of finding a
Mm-hmm.
variety of people who can give you feedback and experience share.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And you're right, there are lots of groups. There's business councils and chambers of commerce and lots of women's groups that people can access to develop those kinds of relationships as they grow because it is challenging and to not be afraid to ask, like you said, to be relentless because
Yeah.
I find a lot of women in particular are really happy to give back because people gave to them to get to where they are. And so for listeners to just not be afraid to ask the questions. I find sometimes a criticism of women is that they are afraid to like dream big and take some of those big leaps like you did. What advice would you give to a woman who is just interested in doing something big, but maybe scared and holding back?
A couple of things. I still feel scared every day of growing this business. And the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with that feeling and the
Yes.
more you're willing to take larger bets on the growth and on the risks. But I also believe that, if your dream isn't big enough, if it doesn't scare you, then it probably is too small. And we're going to work so hard building a business. Why not set your sights really high? And I think it's very true. I think that the statistic is, I think well over 90% of female-run businesses in Canada never scale beyond $1 million. And
Mm-hmm.
what a tragedy that is. Imagine how much economic impact we could have if more women-owned businesses did scale up well beyond
Right.
a million,
Yes.
beyond 100 million. And there's no reason why female-run businesses cannot. It's just choosing that I'm going to set my sights on growing to this as opposed to this.
Hmm.
So, I think you just have to challenge yourself to dream
Yes.
bigger. And I had someone challenge me when I was getting started saying, your vision is not big enough for this. And so that was kind of always something that I kept coming back to is, it's never going to quite end up how you think it is. So
Mm.
why not shoot for something a bit unrealistic?
Hmm. Hmm. I love that, like stretching bigger and just taking the step, right? Like that's often the first challenge for people is taking that first step. But I love that kind of big, bold advice. And I like what you shared about that you're still scared some days because I think sometimes people look at women in roles like you and think like, oh, her life is so easy. She has it all together. She knows what she's doing. And then I think that's why they think they can't do it too. But when leaders like you are authentic and honest about some of the challenges and that you do get scared some days, it helps it make it seem more achievable to people.
Yeah, I mean, I would challenge anyone who said that they don't still get scared, regardless of what size your business is, because the world's constantly changing. The way that you have
Mm,
to run your business is constantly changing. You're as a business leader, you're constantly having to evolve and adapt to the world around you, which the change is like, again, like it's more rapid now than it's ever been.
mhm.
So all of that coming at you and having to look at the whole way you bring your product to market, it is scary. As you learn to navigate change and trust yourself more, the fear dissipates, but it still remains. And I think that it's healthy to still,
Mm-hmm.
be a little bit unsure, ask yourself, challenge
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Right.
And I think the first step to failure is feeling like you've got it all figured out, because yeah.
I think that's very wise advice. I love the idea that we can, and you've talked about this, grow companies that are compassionate, caring, give back, are smart, and at the same time, you're making money, right? Like you're a real company doing real things, but you're also, incorporating some of these things into your culture. Do you think, and this is more something I'm curious about, but that women leaders are do that at a different pace than male leaders? Like, do you see that more in women-led companies?
I think I'm exposed to quite a few phenomenal, women leaders, and I do see that often in women-led
Mm.
businesses. So I don't know, what exactly the statistics are, but I think there is something about, women that leads us to look holistically across our business's impact and think about how, for me anyways, I realized, this might sound weird, but I realized early on that making money wasn't the hard part. It's
Mm.
like all of the other thing. It's the culture, it's the impact that you have as a business economically on the community, your environmental footprint and
Mm.
making good choices and smart choices around all of those things. Those are the hard pieces.
Mm.
Money part, for me, that was a simple part to figure out. But it's how do you like leave an impact and leave a legacy and do something more with your business than just make money? Because how hard is it to make money? It's not,
Mm.
but to like start a business that, leaves your community better,
Mm.
aligns with charitable organizations that are making a real difference, in your community or across the country. I think that's the real flex of entrepreneurship or leadership that I would like to see more of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It also makes me think too about, and I don't know your own experience, but I think sometimes for women, they struggle with, well, if I'm busy working all the time and growing this company, I won't have time for my family. And it is true, you're going to work hard and you're probably going to grow lots of the time. But depending, of course, on your business, you can create some of that flexibility in your life. Sometimes that can be if your business is doing really well, you can outsource some of those things maybe that you don't like to do or don't have time to do. Or you can build in time, depending on your business, of course, like where you can take time to do some things with your kids. So you get the benefit of that mental stimulation. You're growing a company, you're employing other people, and especially in your company, you're contributing positively. You're helping like feed your family as well, but you can still integrate some of those really important things with you into your life with your family and prioritizing some of those things because you build this business. And I think sometimes that gets lost in the either or of things.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm so excited to share that NextGen 2026 has officially launched. My company, Beacon North Strategies, founded and co hosted this event with NHM Connect. NextGen has become a leading national professional development event for Canadian public affairs and government relations practitioners and those aspiring to join the sector. It's all about building skills, making connections, and preparing for what's next in our field. Early bird tickets are available now. Find all the details on the Beacon North website, and we'll include the link in the show notes.
I think for me personally, I have to remind myself
Mm-hmm.
that I don't have to be the martyr. I don't have to continue to work as hard as I maybe once did. And there are definitely seasons in entrepreneurship that
Mm-hmm.
require different levels of input. And to look back and to get to where we are now, it required
Mm-hmm.
years of a lot of intensity. And for me, I was fortunate that those years came before kids.
Mm-mm.
And I was able to fully dive in and do the work needed. And then when kids came, make different choices. And, I look back and the choices that I made meant that there were years where I didn't grow as much or we didn't open as many stores,
Mhm.
and those were just choices that I wanted to make that fortunately I was able to. Early on, I also made a choice that I didn't want to take on a bunch of venture capital. I took on a small portion of venture capital, and I had a
Mhm.
partner that my values aligned with his. And then I was able to make choices in terms of like prioritizing my family and my
Mm.
lifestyle and my health over the long course. So as opposed to
Yes.
like looking to build the business I have in 5 or 10 years, I looked at building the business that I have in 10 or 20 years. And that worked for me and our family, and an ability to find a bit of that integration,
Hmm.
which it's not always easy, it's not always possible, but for me, it's I try to remind myself that I can control this, and yeah, I can take the Friday afternoon off and go be at my kids'
Hmm.
school.
I've written blog posts about that. It's like it's possible, but you also have to protect it because
Mhm.
there's always too much to do. Like I find when I'm done work, like I'm never actually done work. I could work for many more hours. So you have to kind of force yourself to be like, no, like I am going to go make dinner for my family and do some of these other things. And it is really hard to actually protect why maybe some women go into entrepreneurship to begin with. For some is to have some of that flexibility, and you certainly don't get it if you don't keep trying at building it in. I want,
Yeah, the
yeah.
for sure the to-do list never ends.
Hmm.
And I found that I have to get really comfortable with knowing that there's always things and there's always people waiting and emails unanswered.
Hmm.
And to me, like the thing that I've learned is like ruthless prioritization. And
Hmm.
that's like weekly, daily, hourly,
Hmm.
what really matters most in order to like move the needle that I want to in my business, in my personal life, in my health. And, it's not
Hmm.
a like, kind of daily checklist of like following the same things. It's a daily check-in of what do I need to do differently and what choices do I need to make today.
Right. When you talk about the personal values piece and how you've built it into your company, I've been reflecting on that a lot. My business is now 5 years. And so I actually have been going back over the last week looking at, what did I say was like the ultimate thing I wanted to contribute to the world? And then how have I built my business around actually contributing to that and actually thinking about those things and how is it ingrained in my culture? So how have you been able to bring some of your values into your partnerships, the causes and the culture at your company?
Yeah, when I was first getting started, first of all, I have to say that there was a community of women in Regina that I admired so much that were so community minded. And I was so inspired by
Mm.
the power that they had when they set their mind to a fundraising goal to get a new piece of medical equipment. I saw this and I was like, that is so much more important,
Mm.
than the financial part of it. Again, it
Right.
was like you need to have that. Yes, of course, you need to make money, you have to have profit, but wow, the power when you set your mind to something and doing
Mm.
something bigger than just creating economic impact is phenomenal. So
Mm.
I was inspired pretty early on to think differently. I think about how my business could have impact. And I think that, that value was something that it was instilled in me growing up in my family that was important to me. And
Mm.
then navigating that does add an extra layer. It doesn't come without its work in a company. It does add an
Mm.
extra layer.
Mm-hmm.
And figuring out how to integrate that across the business so that it just flows seamlessly in, again, everything that we do and how our team thinks and how we approach partnerships and everything from like the pricing of our product to the partnerships that we have, to know that like at the end of the day, 1% of our sales is going back to these organizations that we partner with. That it is an extra layer of work
Mm-hmm.
in the business. So I
Yeah.
learned that in time I needed to like set that up and structure that so that it ran on its own and it was entrenched in the business, because as I got older and I navigated losing my father to ALS. I
Mm.
had my first daughter. I went through cancer. all of those things deeply impacted me and how I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to live my life, and really reinforced that my top value in my life is my family over
Mm-hmm.
everything else. And I never wanted to, have this business take away from being a good mom, feeling like I was really adding value to the lives of my children to shape them as good humans for the future. So it's meant, figuring out how to navigate that as that has changed over time from,
Mm-hmm.
being a single woman in my 20s to having 3 children today.
Right. You've talked throughout the conversation about how health is an important aspect, and you mentioned about your cancer journey. Can you talk about navigating illness while growing a company?
It can be incredibly challenging when you get sick as
Hmm.
the leader of an organization. And I feel so fortunate that I had incredible people in my company, people that I trusted and relied on, because of that, I was able to just fully step back. The day that I got diagnosed, I stepped back and I didn't
Mm.
step foot in my business for 6 weeks. And I just like let everything go, because I knew that the journey of dealing with cancer needed my full attention and all of my energy, and everything else in the business could just wait. It would be there for me when I was better. And so, I feel really thankful that I had taken that approach and had people that I really relied on as right-hand people in the company, and I trusted, and I was able to make that choice. And that, I guess the realization of that lesson has always stuck with me. And I've
Mm.
also, like, since then, have continued to be a bit, again, relentless of the type of people that I want to have in the company. And I will
Hmm.
like never have someone I don't trust in my business.
Right.
Because you don't know, and you want to always be surrounded by people that you can fully hand things off to.
Hmm. And when you came back to work, did you come back full time? Were you under treatment? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, I was so fortunate that my cancer was caught early, that I was just able to
Mm.
have surgery, and then I didn't have to continue treatment. So, after about a month and a half that everything was completed, I was able to come back to work, but I didn't come back full time. I found a way. And through the process of, dealing with that, it was right at the beginning of COVID. I sort of questioned my whole life and how it was set up, and made a series of decisions that led to our family moving to BC to be closer to our extended family, and
Mm.
change our lifestyle. Live on a little hobby farm and grow like the majority of our food out here, and have a more active outdoor life cycle and lifestyle. And I took a bit of time. I really took the next couple of years to not jump right back into the business and sort of repeat that, that kind of cycle, but really just question, how do I want my role in my company to be structured, and what works for me, because it was like that was 14 years into the business. Things were built to a certain extent, and I could at
Mm.
that point redefine my role in the business and what
Hmm.
really worked for me.
I think it's such an important message because it will become true for so many business owners, right? Like lots of people get sick throughout their lives. I have a chronic illness, which is actually part of the reason I became an entrepreneur. And my business is actually structured in a different way than a typical business in my industry because of that, which has allowed us to be very innovative. And I have another friend right now going through something similar where she's quite sick. And we've had some really tough conversations about how as an entrepreneur, like nothing for anybody, nothing is more important than your health. And it's really challenging when you're an entrepreneur, especially when you're a sole entrepreneur. You don't have staff to back you up in situations. And I think when you talked about having that team that supported you, that is something that I have a small team, but that I have as well. And it makes a huge difference for those kinds of things. And I feel like it can be so scary sometimes for people to take on employees and teams, but with the right people, it really is. It's good for the company, you're creating jobs, but it can also just be good for you and your health as well.
When I was getting started, I read the book The E-Myth, and it
Mm.
talks all about entrepreneurship. And if you start something, maybe you're passionate about something, so you start a business doing it. And if you don't scale it up, then you've just created a job for yourself and you really haven't achieved what entrepreneurship is supposed to kind of give you in your life. So I realized from the beginning that I either needed to scale or it was going to be this kind of, hamster wheel
Right.
of wearing every single hat, which, I think is very challenging to not lead to burnout
Yes.
because you can't be good at everything and you can't be good at everything forever.
No.
So I feel like fortunate that I had read that book, had access to that, and I sort of like formulated that belief that for me it was going to be a journey of scaling up, and that came with its certain set of hardships and challenges, but that there was a light at the end of the tunnel that eventually you'd have a strong team around you that could support you, and I wouldn't have to be the person wearing every hat.
Yeah, it's very challenging doing all of the things. I want to give you a moment to talk about some of the really exciting things you're doing, so the Olympic Committee and maybe, what's coming down the pipe. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, we announced this incredible partnership earlier this year. And over the years, we've had sort of like an organic relationship with different athletes, some formalized partnerships with athletes and with the COC, but this is a partnership on a really different scale. And we've signed on to be the official jewelry partner for Team Canada for the next 4 years. So we're so excited about this because we see our product being worn on athletes every single day. And it's always like incredible to like see the product come to life and be worn in real life, arenas and stadiums. So it was like a natural for us to take this next step with the COC and create this partnership. And so we're creating a collection that's going to launch later this year with a variety of pieces from earrings and necklaces and bracelets and rings. And a portion of that collection will go back to support our athletes. So that collection is going to be for sale for 4 years. And we're just really
Mm,
thrilled to be taking this next step as the official partner for the COC.
that's really exciting. I think, if I remember correctly, which can't promise I am, I think it might have been that announcement that came across like my feed or something where I was like, I need to interview her for the podcast. Like, I think that's how I found you.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's kind of like just this natural progression to kind of have taken this on. And, it's like a big step for our business to be doing
Mm,
this, but really feel like it's the right alignment, the right partnership. And we feel so proud as a business to be able to be doing this and to just be in some small way a part of supporting, national heroes, which are our Canadian athletes.
yeah. Oh, that's so exciting and such an important time right now, with so much volatility to have such a
Mm.
positive thing. And athletics is something that brings us all together and can be
Mhm.
celebrated. So that's really fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. It really does bring us together as a nation, and I think that sometimes the world pauses to just celebrate and cheer on
Hmm.
and come together in a way.
Yes.
So it feels really aligned to our brand and the values that we stand for to have kicked off this partnership. And we just can't wait to watch how it evolves over the next 4 years, especially as we're like embarking on a huge expansion. So right now
Mm.
we have stores from Kelowna to Newmarket, Ontario, and we have 15 locations, but we're planning to double our store count and get to 30 in the next couple of years and have many stores already planned out and deals signed. So we're excited to bring Hillberg Berk to, more stores and more malls across Canada to have more people be able to experience our product in real life.
Well, congratulations. That's very exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really, really excited for this next stage of our journey.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Let's jump into the rapid fire questions. Can you share a rule you broke that turned out to be a great decision?
Um, I think something I heard early on was like, don't hire your friends. And I think on different occasions, I brought people into the business that I would consider friends. It turned out to be an incredible hire, an incredible partner in the company, people who helped elevate us to the next level. So, and I also feel like I have like a relationship with my employees that, I really care deeply about them.
Hmm.
That's, I think a rule that many entrepreneurs try and keep a distance, but I don't. I care deeply about them. I care about their experience in H&B and their experience beyond H&B, and hope that we can be a stepping stone to something even greater in their life.
I love that you shared that. I think that that makes me feel seen because I'm more like that as a leader too, and sometimes people tell me not to be. So thank you for sharing that, Rachel. Who's a woman who continually inspires you?
I do think back often to that group of women in Regina
Mm,
who were friends and came together to tackle challenges the city had with access to equipment, access to breast cancer imaging, and
mm,
just decided that they were going to do it. And even though it seemed crazy to be able to raise a few $1 million, just did it. And I sort of think about what the mindset that they had, and just believing that they could do it.
mm,
And I like to think back and sort of channel some of those women, how would they approach a problem, or what would they be thinking, or, how would
mm.
they feel, as I think about sometimes, approaching scary things and navigating scary things in my business.
That's a great example. What's one book that significantly impacted your perspective or values? I wasn't sure if it was already the one that you mentioned or if you have another book.
Yeah, I think that every entrepreneur should read The E-Myth, and there's two versions of that book as well. Um, you know, a lot of work by Simon Sinek has been influential in my life and reshaping how I think about creating a business and creating culture. Yvonne Chouinard and Let My People Go Surfing, the founder of Patagonia, that book was very influential, and again, shaping how I thought about doing culture differently.
Mm,
I love that there's just access to so much information and so many
mhm.
podcasts. There's almost
Yes.
sometimes it's too much,
Yes.
but I think, entrepreneurs live in an age where you can find exactly what you need when you need it. And there's just kind of no excuses for not having the wealth of resources at your fingertips.
Especially with podcasts, I find them such a good resource because they're free. Like some of them are really master classes and they're free. Like even this one, like people are giving free career and life advice, right? That yeah, it's very valuable and a good tool to check out when you're trying to level up. And there's surprisingly some that are just so niche.
Definitely. And I think sometimes the challenge is how do you find the right content that's right for you, for what you
Hmm
need in the moment? And
hmm
I've found it helpful to ask people for recommendations. Hey, I'm dealing with this, I'm navigating this. Do you have any, do you have a book recommendation or a podcast? And then sometimes you kind of cut straight to the heart of what you need to hear when you ask for a recommendation from someone who's actually listened to it.
Wow. Well, thank you, Rachel. That's a great piece of advice to end on. Thank you so much for your time and being here today and sharing your exciting story and your advice with all of us.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Women Don't Do That. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating or review. Connect with us on Instagram at Women Don't Do That and visit our website www.womendon'tdothat.com for more details. Join our Patreon to support our work. Find all of the links in the show notes. Remember, you have the power to transform your what ifs into let's go. Together, let's redefine your possible. Until next time. The opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Women Don't Do That, Stephanie Mitten, or affiliated brands.